Hello, my name is Virgil and this is Literally Books. Today I want to talk about a novelette by Lucius Shepard from 2003 called Only Partly Here. Originally this was published as in part of a collection called Truello and Other Stories. That collection is difficult to find, but you can find this story one of a couple ways. One, the Audible is available for free. It's only about an hour and some change, a little less than an hour and 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. But you can also find it in this collection of his, put out by Subterranean Press, The Best of Lucius Shepard, Volume 1, which Subterranean Press makes some really great hardcover editions, and you can usually find these sort of collections for not anything too crazy. They won't be cheap, but they won't be crazy expensive either, usually. Now, this story is about a young man named Bobby who works as part of a cleanup crew at the 9/11 crash site. I guess I should also say, maybe real quick before I go through this too much, Lucius Shepard is known for his speculative fiction or magical realism sort of fiction, right? So I knew that this wasn't just going to be just a plain story, although I will say that it could have been, right? He didn't have to make this have some sort of an other element, some sort of a speculative fiction element to it. Not that I'm criticizing him for it, because I'm not, but rather to say that the quality of the writing and the skill of the storytelling really elevated the story to what I think is really kind of a very traditional or old story. So as I was saying, Bobby is part of a cleanup crew at the 9/11 crash site. He works with a couple other guys who are traditional blue-collar workers, they're career blue-collar guys, right, doing this cleanup. They have like a second shift sort of thing, so they work till midnight. They're very jaded about the whole experience, mostly because they're tired of the touristy stuff, right? People who are really only interested in them because of this sort of like perverted sort of attraction to this tragic event, right? They're tired of celebrities and things like that wanting to take pictures up there and talk about how brave these men are for doing this work and those sorts of things. You know, they're just sort of done with all that talk and all that other stuff. You know, it's really made them kind of embittered toward the rest of the populace. We'll put it like that. And Bobby is sort of a college student who has sort of like stopped going to college for the time being, and he might go back, but right now he's doing this work for whatever reason. Maybe he's feeling a little aimless. And the older guys are kind of giving him a hard time about it. You know, like, well, what are you doing here? You know, are you just a tourist? You know, he's been doing this work with them a while, but they're still kind of like saying, you don't belong here. You need to go back and do the thing that you should be doing. You shouldn't be here. But they all get along, right? This is just kind of how friends interact with each other. In the site, they'll find things. Obviously, if they find a body, they'll be like, all the work will stop, and then they'll excavate this body, you know, and they have to wait for all that stuff to happen. Even though these guys are jaded by this, that still affects them, right? There's still that sort of feeling, that sort of grief or whatever that they're still even experiencing, even if it's maybe second or third hand. That kind of makes them quieter. And of course, they don't deal with it in a way that, in a very open way or anything, right? It's sort of, they resent that grief. And then, of course, Bobby also will sometimes find objects when they're doing this cleanup. They don't know what they are. You know, objects that look like they could be part of an elevator or some sort of copy machine or some other thing, right? Or personal effects that they don't really know what they are, right? And sometimes they'll take these things home as souvenirs. Now, after work, they go to a bar, right? Around midnight or so, they go to this bar and drink for a couple hours before they'll go home. They do it to unwind, right? You can't just go home straight after work. Like, you have to like burn off that other energy, right? Whatever this other energy is that you get from doing this cleanup, you have to go burn it off. And so that's what they do at the bar. They go to the bar and they get a drink or two and sit around and kind of chat or just kind of hang out there, right? And they go there too, and it's kind of funny that they say this, that at some point they must have gone here and had a good time, but it's not like they have that good time anymore. It's like they go back to this bar night after night, hoping that they'll have that good time. While they're there one night, they notice this this businesswoman who's sitting at the bar, who looks like she has a lot of money. She's definitely like a career woman. The other guys are kind of giving Bobby some trouble because he's kind of noticing her, and so he's like, I'm going to go up and talk to her. And so he begins this very awkward conversation with her where she's like, listen, I'm not interested, whatever, I'm just here. And then he's like, hey, I'm not even saying that, right? She's like, was that your line that you're just trying to find out more about me? He's trying to ask her if she's just some sort of a tourist. And it starts this conversation with her at some point. She sort of grudgingly was like, fine, I'll talk to you a little bit about how she's just trying to figure out what this thing means, that the 9/11 event, this crash, the devastation, what it sort of means to her. And so she's just trying to work through that. And so Bobby is also not like just trying to sleep with her, although he's not necessarily not interested, but he also just sort of finds that he can talk with her about these things that he really maybe struggles to talk about with the other guys that he works with. And so they start having these conversations, and she's usually there on these nights after works. And slowly they develop a sort of like an acceptance of each other. At some point she says something like, Jesus, we're just sitting here not even talking, like we're a married couple or something, right? And at some point I think Bobby realizes that it's not going to happen between him and her, right? Like that's not going to happen, but he still wants to talk to her. They're still working something out between them, right? This struggle that they're both having with what happened and with their own lives and where they're at in their own lives. They're still working through that. And I'll stop there without going too much farther. Such a wonderfully written story. Again, I felt like this was a story that you could like give the plot points to this and you would say, oh, I've seen this story before in other formats. And that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with a plot or a series of events that you've seen before. It's the way that Lucius Shepard tells that story that's so well done, so well written. He has such a great ear for that blue collar sort of manner of speech that doesn't feel false or forced. It doesn't feel like a touristy sort of presentation of it. It feels authentic. The language itself is so well done, and also does really great work as far as like dealing with these really complicated emotions that these characters, all of these characters that we encounter, have, and how they're sort of each going through a different thing. And even though we don't necessarily have explicitly it laid out before us what the problem of this character is, or what their struggle is, or why they feel this way or that way, even though that isn't given to us, we sort of can still empathize with them, still feel that same energy that they have. It's just so excellently done. Fantastic story. Like I said, this is a novelette, which is a format you don't see very much of, right? Usually it's short stories or novels. And I know Shepard did particularly well in this format, in these shorter formats, these like not a short story, and maybe even a little beyond a novella, right? Maybe even a little beyond a novella, but not quite a novel, not quite that long. And he does so well in this format. This story is just, it has this great pacing that doesn't ever feel like it has a lull in it. It feels like all the fat has been cut from this. Which I really liked. It's unfortunate this format isn't as attractive, but I think it really should be. I really think that these sort of short novels are fantastic. I love that you don't have to devote all this time to a very long-winded and drawn-out story. A lot of times unnecessarily drawn out. That this story only does what it needs to do. But it never feels hurried or clipped down either. Just recently, I had a great second conversation with Bob from Wheel of Genre, where we were on the Avram Davidson Universe podcast. And we were talking about different writers. I don't even know if this was in the recording or not. Different writers and talking about the length of a piece of work and how writers sometimes get sort of like shoehorned into a format that isn't theirs. And what came to mind, or at least I was thinking of, was, for example, Dorothy Scarborough's The Wind, which is really phenomenal beginning, and then a really lackluster centerpiece. I think it doesn't match the beginning of that story or the dramatic ending to that story. It felt like, that novel should have been half of its own length. I think if Lucius Shepard had written more, if he had made these novels somehow, we would maybe know him more. But I think the works would be depreciated. I don't think they would be as good. This would not be as good a story if it were longer. It has the right length that it needs, and it's really great that he knew intuitively what the right length was. And also, interestingly, Lucius Shepard was a friend of Avram's. I believe Avram actually taught him writing for a little while, for a very short time. And I think that later on in Avram's life, Lucius was also involved and sort of interacting with him in those later years. I think that comes from an introduction that Lucius did to some of Avram's LIMEKILLER stories. Fantastic read. If you have Audible, I really recommend it. An hour and 10 minutes or less is not a lot of your time, right? I want to say maybe it's also even available on YouTube for free, but don't quote me on that. I mean, you can quote me on that, but I might be wrong. I was wondering how this story dealing with 9/11 would work, right? If it was going to be a story that felt too much of its own time, saying too much about something that was just at that moment, which is fine, right? It was an extremely tragic and very impactful event. And I thought there was a lot of respect and reverence and also a genuine, important, and I guess you could even say touching or very emotionally intelligent story. Such great writing. Would totally recommend Lucius Shepard and totally recommend this story, even if it maybe doesn't sound like it's your thing. I promise that there is something interesting the story does, but it isn't oversold, right? That the type of story that it isn't oversold. It's sold in just the right way. Thank you very much for watching. A like and subscribe is appreciated if you enjoy this sort of thing. I've got a support link. Hopefully get some more stuff out here real soon, right? June was a tight month for me. A lot of things going on, and sometimes you get into I guess you could say it's a reading slump. It's just sort of I needed a little breather from going down the reading path really hard. Lots of wonderful collaborations happening, right? 2 collaborations right now with Bob over on the Avram Davidson podcast Universe podcast. I always say it backwards. I'll put a link to that show there as well. It's really so good. So we did 2 stories. Maybe we'll even do more, He said, yeah, maybe we'll do this again. I said, I'll keep doing this until you make me stop. Anyhow, thanks very much. Go out there, read some stuff. Check out Lucius Shepard. There's probably some other collections as well of his works that aren't hardback that might be a little bit easier priced. I know one of his very well-known stories, The Jaguar Hunter. Wow, I said Jaguar, strange, is available as well. So, thanks very much. Funny thing said right here. Boom, there you go. That's it. That's all. Bye.